All righty.
This is Joe Baldacci. I'm co-chair of the State and Local Government Committee meeting for January 19th, 2022. Sorry about that. And my co-chair is Representative Ann Matlack, and we'll go around and introduce ourselves. Representative Matlack, could you introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you, sir. Good morning, all. My name is Ann Matlack. I represent House District 92, which includes the communities of Cushing, Thomaston, South Thomaston, St. George, Matinicus, Creehaven, and the Muscle Ridge Island. And I'm the House Chair for this committee.
Thank you, Representative Paulus. Good morning. Are you with us?
I am here. Good morning, everybody. I'm Representative Sean Paulus. I represent House District 52, which is all of the city of Bath. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks. Representative Reisman? Representative Reisman, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. My name is Representative Reisman, Walter Reisman. I live in Harrison, Maine. I represent District 69, which is Bridgeton, Harrison, and Denmark.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Lynn Copeland, good morning.
Good morning, Chair Baldacci. It's good to be here. My name is Lynn Copeland, and I'm honored to represent the folks in House District 14, which is downtown and coastal Saco. Welcome.
Thank you. Representative Downs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Downs. I represent District 130, which is Bucksport and Arlington. Welcome.
Thank you. Representative Mark Bryant?
Thank you, Chair Baldacci. Welcome all. I'm Mark Bryant. I represent House District 24, which is part of the town of Wyndham.
Morning.
Oh, was that me? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Kimberly Rosen, Senate District 8. My district goes from Castine all the way up to Lincoln through the city of Brewer. I have 16 towns in between.
Thank you. Representative Toole?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm Will Toole. I represent the Machias area, plus Lubec and Eastport. And I live in East Machias. Thank you very much.
Representative Francis Head, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and thank you. And I am Francis Head. I live in Bethel. I represent District 117, 23 towns and townships in Western Maine.
Thank you. And as I said, I'm Joe Baldacci. I represent Bangor and Herman in Senate District 9. We also are helped out by our committee clerk, Cheryl McGowan. Good morning, Cheryl. And our OPLA analyst and navigator, Lynn Caswell. Good morning, Lynn. Lynn, you're on mute.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
First item of business is GA review Maine Governmental Facilities Authority. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you just give us a brief introduction to Ms. Hayes?
Yes. So Terry Hayes, who is being moved over, is the executive director of the Maine Government Facilities Authority. She is here to answer questions and speak briefly about the GEA report that they submitted at the end of last year, and to answer any questions the committee may have. I believe Ms. Hayes was a member of the legislature at one point in her past, and in prior years, there would have been chocolate involved, but with the remote work, we've all forgotten about that. Isn't that correct, Ms. Hayes?
Well, I guess it's a big IOU to the committee. I think what with state and local government 2 years ago, right at the front end of my experience in this role, I was before the committee and I actually mailed out whoopie pies ahead of time. I was not that on the ball this year. So mea culpa, this one's on me, guys. I'm sorry. for that. But I will tell you that when I looked up the last time that the Government Facilities Authority came before the committee for this purpose, my name was on the committee letterhead. So that was just 7 years ago. I appreciate the work that all of you folks do, have sat at that horseshoe for 6 of the 8 years that I served in the legislature. So I did not prepare a formal presentation because I wasn't sure that you wanted me to take up that kind of your collective time. I can tell you briefly that the Government Facilities Authority is unique in that we really only have one borrower, which is the state of Maine. And as the bank, really what the Government Facilities Authority is the bank for moral obligation borrowing. We only borrow money that has been approved by the legislature for facilities improvement or infrastructure improvement to state-owned facilities. And we only do that once you folks as the legislature have passed it, given us instructions, if you will, and the governor has signed it. And then the debt service payments are part of the annual budget. And so that's what we do. And everything that we do is based on legislation that you folks have passed. The Government Facilities Authority doesn't have any other entities that it works on behalf of except for the judicial, legislative, and administrative branches of government, executive branch. You also, there are no appropriations from the state budget for the overhead costs or the administration of Government Facilities Authority. Our operating budget is about $300,000 a year. It bounces right around that figure. And we have a fee structure in our loan programs on behalf of MGFA, and we pay for those overhead costs out of the loan proceeds. So you won't see a line item. The only line item in the budget is the debt service line. So you're paying the bondholders who purchased the bonds so that we could build those facilities. In the material that we submitted to the committee, there's a list of all of the loans, all of the bonds that we've sold since Government Facilities existed in 1988, I think it was. And so you can see the sum total. Some of those are paid off, paid in full. Others, we're continuing to pay down that debt. And I would suggest to you that most of your districts, particularly if you have any kind of a court or corrections facility anywhere in your districts, you have probably, some of the local area has benefited from some of this investment in infrastructure in those facilities in particular. Plus, I'm looking at Representative Bryan, who has this nice photo of from the balcony of the House. And when you are able to serve in the State House, the renovations that were done to the State House, I can't remember the exact year, but I'm thinking Libby Mitchell was a prominent a force in leadership at the time. Those improvements were examples of multiple bond investments that the legislature approved, and Government Facilities access that money from the bond market. And you all benefit from those investments when you're able to work on campus.
Ms. Hayes, thank you. It's great to have you here. It looks like from the materials that you provided that the existing indebtedness is about 357 million. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't have the number in front of me, but it's, yes, round figures.
Okay. And is that about average? Are we pretty much, are we looking in terms of debt ratios, in terms of credit and everything?
Well, what's interesting is that I think the treasurer, sir, would be in a better position, Senator, to answer that question because of the big picture. Because I don't know, I was looking at the general obligation debt. This is all moral obligation debt. Technically, the Government Facilities Authority is an entity that the legislature created. And it is the MGFA that owes that money. Yes, the state covers the debt service. And then once a bond is paid in full, we transfer ownership of the improvements that that bond paid for, that investment, we transfer ownership back to the state. So on the state's books, the moral obligation debt is listed, but it's factored in differently by the credit agencies, and the treasurer may be in a better position to speak to its impact in the broader picture.
Are there members of the committee that have questions for Ms. Hayes? Representative Tool?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank former Treasurer Hayes for her work there, and to also comment that, you know, I believe it was the MGFA that helped get our Down East prison rebuild off the ground. And I want to thank her for that, and thank all of the staff there for that, as well as the administration in their efforts.
Well, you're welcome. I will say we're only the banker. We don't engage around the policy issues of whether the investment should happen here or there. We wait for your instructions, and then we do our best to secure the funds necessary at the lowest possible cost in terms of the financing costs, carrying costs for the bonds.
Certainly appreciate it.
I'm sorry, Representative Tool, did you have another question?
No, we certainly appreciate it, because that kind of work should not be overlooked, you know, the ins and outs of making those transactions happen.
Representative Walter Reisman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you, Terry. Question, the way I understand what you're saying is that a bond will be initiated by the legislature for you to borrow money. Is that correct?
It's typically what happens is it's embedded in the budget because the carrying costs, the debt service payments will be in the budget. So there's language in the biennial budget that goes through the legislative process and includes borrowing, which might be for the executive branch, it might be for the legislative branch, or it could be for the judicial branch. They're considered three separate borrowers within GFA, but the debt service payments come out of the general fund earmarked for whatever the carrying costs are for that outstanding loan. So it's not necessarily a separate bill, but it can be part of what I would call the overall capital investment by the administration. And you know, there was, let me think about this. We don't necessarily go to the market every year for GFA. It depends on what amounts of money are approved but are not yet issued. And the capacity of within DAFs or the judicial branch, because they often do their own planning around this, when they're ready for the funds, when they need them. So we are currently working on a bond sale. We'll probably go to the market, if not at the end of January, the early part of February, and close in February for about $53 million. That is our multiple projects already approved, and now the agencies that are responsible for those infrastructure improvements are ready to put that money to work. So we'll sell that $53 million in bonds competitively in, like I said, the end of this month or so. And then that cash will be available before the end of February. And the way it works internally is as contractors submit for payment, that's processed by DAFs, for example, and then the requisition comes here, and the last signature to pay out is mine. And then we typically pay the contractors direct through wire transfer.
So just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So there's a time when the bond is not issued, but authorized. And what if any of, you mentioned 53 million, what if any are other amounts that have been authorized but have not been issued? And how far back would that go?
Oh, it doesn't go back all that far. I'm thinking about this. Prior to the Mills administration, there was nothing, I think there was only maybe a total of 14 million that had been authorized but unissued. And that was within the last 3 years. So it doesn't, when a project or projects are included in the budget, it's generally because the entity is poised to use that money. But we don't want to sell the bonds until we're ready to put that money to use because of the carrying costs. We'd like to have the people of Maine benefit from those infrastructure improvements at the same time that they start paying for it, or as close as we can. So basically, we don't decide that, Representative Reisman. It's the DAF's commissioner, essentially the executive branch, that decides on the timing. And then we go with the only time we do some refundings. Most of our bonds, much of it is 20-year term, okay? And they become callable in 10 years. And when you're looking at that, as you're in the 9th year and you're looking at your interest rates, if we had an interest rate of 4.8% and we're 9 years into that bond and it's callable in year number 10, we can take and refund that back in the market and bring that interest rate down and save the state several $1 million over the final 10 years of that bond. So we will advise the administration as those dates are on the horizon and do some workup with our financial advisor that helps them understand the potential savings. But that's the only time that we would recommend timing when it comes to bonding. Other than that, we're basically the bank waiting for the state to say, okay, we're ready to put this money to work, and we begin the process with that. If we were approached at a time when the market was particularly volatile, we'd have that discussion with them because you are our customer. We would explain what limited capacity we have to see into the future, but we're going to go to the market when DAFS is ready, okay, or in this case, the judicial branch.
Representative Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hayes, thank you for being here and explaining all this to us. You talked about projects that the $53 million. Overall, we passed a budget of like 80 million or something for facilities, repair and renovation and so forth. And I know that's over time, but are some of those projects included in that 53 million?
I don't know is the best answer I can give you, Representative Copeland, because I'm not familiar with the details of that broader $80 million or that reference point. And I don't even have a list in front of me of what is included in the 53 million, to be honest with you, but I'm happy to provide that as a follow-up to the committee. We've drafted the language. A detailed description of the improvements is part of the information that we use to market the bonds. And we get that from the agencies that will be responsible for using those facilities. So if that would be helpful, I'm happy to send that to the clerk and she could share it with the committee.
Right, I think that would be helpful to have a listing of where these recent projects are going to be funded. I think Representative Copeland, that the 80 million or so we didn't have to borrow. It came directly from the federal relief fund, so we didn't have to go out and bond it. So I think that I'm almost positive that this 53 million that Ms. Hayes is speaking of is separate. So, but I think that was directly paid for without having to bond, which actually saves the state a lot of money, future interest. So
It sure does. Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Chair.
absolutely, absolutely. So any other questions of Ms. Hayes? Hayes, do you have any further comments?
Just wanted to point out an essential component of our organizational structure is a 5-person board. And the members of the board are chosen by the governor. And their job is to oversee the work that we're doing at the bond bank on behalf of GFA. And just Joel Allenbach currently is our board chair. The treasurer sits on the GFA board as well as the other two boards that I work for. So there is a scrutiny beyond just the staff here. And again, we're teed up to make sure we're only doing what it is that the legislature and the governor has directed us to do.
Thank you very much. One last question is, in terms of, you guys have a private audit done every year or every other year? And
Every year.
Okay.
And the zip file that we provided to Lynn, the clerk, included the last 10 annual audits.
Okay.
It's right up to and including the report for the FY 21.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Sure, I should point out there's a significant a difference. I need to explain this, because if you look at the FY 20 and then FY 21, you're going to see a difference of about $4 million, which is I think it's a big difference, particularly for an agency that's operating expenses are about $300,000 a year. And the bulk of that is paying for insurance on all of those improvements that we've invested in. Well, there's a standard of practice within the bond industry that fees are applied to a transaction at the beginning of the transaction, and then there are annual fees because there's tracking and work that needs to be done to make sure bond payments are made and take care of arbitrage and a variety of things the entire time that that bond is outstanding. Well, we were in the habit of charging fees at both those timeframes, or for both those pieces. And it resulted in overcharging because the nature of this organization is different, and we don't have multiple customers or clients. We only have the state. We were generating much more in fees than we needed to pay our costs. So in FY 20, at the end of FY 20, we returned $4 million to the state, to DAFs, and we adjusted our fee structure. All of this with full board support. We then administered the new fee structure, and we still ended up with more money than we needed. So we have, the board has adopted on staff recommendation, a fee structure that will allow us to waive the fees at any point when we are overfunded, and we are overfunded. So for FY 22, we will not be charging any fees to GFA because we have more than enough money. We're trying to keep about around 3 years of operating expenses available, and not any more than that. So we might get into FY 23 without any fees as well. Just wanted to point that out, because if you look at those last 2 years, the numbers are going to look funky. And it was intentional. It was on recommendation because we were just, there's nothing else we could use that money for. We had no need for it. It really belonged to the state, and we're trying not to accumulate more.
Well, that's a very heartening report and very well, very welcomed. Appreciate your prudent acumen on a lot of these issues. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Ms. Hayes. We appreciate your time and your presentation of this report, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you all very much. Continue your good work on all of our behalfs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have Representative Greenwood has joined us. Good morning. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I apologize for my tardiness, having some internet connectivity issues. My name is Randall Greenwood. I am the state rep for House District number 82, which are the towns of Litchfield, Monmouth, my hometown of Wales, in both Androscoggin and Kennebec counties. Thank you.
Good morning. We're going to start with public hearings, LD 383, then 1187, and then 1658. Co-chair Matlack, I'm going to have to, at about 10 minutes of 11, I have to go to a conference, a court conference. So I'm going to sign off probably for 20 or 30 minutes, and I'm going to need to turn the reins over, and then I'll be back probably around 11:20 or so.
Okay, not a problem.
Thank you. So today, this is a public hearing. Lynn, do you want to start on the items The first one is going to be the act concerning small wireless facilities. But briefly, I just want to welcome our viewers. The meeting is currently being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. That means that anyone who is a participant in the meeting via Zoom can be seen and also heard if their microphone is unmuted. People on the Zoom meeting waiting to testify cannot be seen or heard until they are called upon to speak. The meeting will be recorded and available to view on the committee's YouTube channel soon after the meeting has concluded. A reminder to members of the committee about the use of the Zoom chat function. This function is not to be used for substantive discussions by anyone. You should know that the chat window can be viewed by any person taking part in this meeting as a participant. Participants include members of the committee, staff, and any members of the public during the time they have been promoted to participant for the purpose of providing testimony to the committee. This is a public hearing, and for each bill heard today, I or my co-chair will call on sponsors and co-sponsors to speak first. When called upon, you will be promoted from attendee to participant. After presentation by the sponsor and co-sponsors, we will call on members of the public based on how they registered to testify for the bill, against the bill, or neither for nor against the bill, but wishing to provide information. When you are called upon, I will ask you to state your name, your place of residence, the organization you represent, if any. And after you are done speaking and there are no more questions from members, I or my co-chair will return you to attendee status and call upon the next person registered to speak. So Lynn, our first item is LD 383.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. And the sponsor, Representative Sophie Warren, is here. This was a concept draft. She released a proposed amendment yesterday, which is online and was sent to all of you and interested parties yesterday.
Okay. Representative Warren, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Good morning, Senator Baldacci. Good morning, Representative Matlack, and all respected members of the State and Local Government Committee and staff, anyone from the public. This bill has to do with a 2019 law adopted in June of 2019 called an Act to Facilitate the Deployment of Small Wireless Facilities in Maine. And it included the following provision. And I quote, "Notwithstanding any zoning or land use ordinance to the contrary, a small wireless facility must be permitted use within the public right-of-way, subject to permitting requirements and duly adopted non-discriminatory conditions otherwise applicable to permitted uses within the municipality and consistent with state and federal law." Now, in current state law from June 2019, this phrase non-discriminatory manner has become a bit confusing for some municipalities. Reviewing that 2019 bill and discussion around it, like at the public hearing, it seems possible that there was an intention to allow local governments more discretion. But local officials, at least in my community, I know Lewiston has had some of these issues, Saco, Old Orchard Beach area have had some of these issues, which I included my testimony in reference, different publicly released news articles. Local officials in some of these communities have been advised by industry officials that this is not the case, that they don't have as much discretion as maybe they ought to. So I think it's important to clarify a few rights that I think municipal governments do have, or perhaps ought to have, as intended perhaps in that 2019 bill. So in brief, I believe the wording of the 2019 law created an unintentional removal, or at the very least, quite a bit of confusion about local control. I think my bill clarifies that ability and gives clearer guidance to our local governments. And I want to first credit Scarborough Town Councilor Betsy Gleistein, who, where I fall on one side of the political spectrum, perhaps, she falls on a more conservative side. This was one place where it was kind of more of a technicality, and giving that guidance didn't seem traditionally partisan. And I hope that's clear here, that this bill is really about clarity. So because from the quote that I gave, that's now part of our state law about being consistent with state and federal law, I did want to give a little bit of clarity from the federal level that the regulatory framework we've all had to work under since 2019 says that through FCC guidelines, they favor permitting through a limited standard, including aesthetics and protections for historic, ecological, and scenic resources. So to be noted, under federal law and from case law after that point, health is not a justification for this limited standard of exceptions. And that's not what I'm arguing or putting forward here today. The interpretation is meant that under federal law, local governments, municipal governments can't issue a blanket denial for placing small wireless facilities in a given area, but does allow for a certain amount of discretion. But I think what's happened since that 2019 law is I think current Maine state law has been perhaps unintentionally more restrictive than intended. So the question is, what do we really mean when we say non-discriminatory policy or regulatory frameworks for those municipal governments? Now, in the last year, it's been mostly telecom providers like Verizon and AT&T who have come to local municipalities like ours in Scarborough and have given a certain amount of guidance about small wireless facilities. But there's been a variety of questions. Even you may have seen national news, even I think it was yesterday morning, from the airplane industry, an open letter to President Biden asking for a halt to a rollout of these 5G smart wireless facility technologies because of the interference between those facilities and the ability for the airlines to regulate who's coming, who's flying out and who's coming down. So I think that there's a reasonable amount of questions that are being raised about this technology that maybe isn't coming from those telecom providers themselves. And so we want to make sure that we're giving as much power to our local governments in the meantime, before or until we know as much as we need to know to take that control from localities and kind of keep it at that state level. So in 2020, in April, there was a town council meeting in my hometown here in Scarborough that kind of set a regulatory framework for how we might want to approach small wireless facilities. And I want to be clear that those are some of the parameters that are guiding what is in this sponsor amendment. So it includes protecting the visual character of ecologically sensitive or scenic resources, historic properties. Like here in Scarborough, we have the largest salt marsh in the state, which we're very proud of, and wanting to make sure that that stays available for people to view and see the beauty of, and also remain safe for animals and ecological wildlife that are there. Maintaining other aesthetic properties consistent with neighborhood characteristics was another one. Requiring just establishing some kind of clear distance from residential properties and a separation between the small wireless facilities themselves, in part for concerns about height limitations, as well as maximum noise emissions. And then a question about abutter notifications. If there's going to be a facility that comes in, who has a right to be notified about that by the town? So again, this non-discriminatory manner phrase perhaps is intended to give this amount of discretion if ordinances are to be passed locally. But as of right now, we've been kind of wrestling with this for a couple of years here in Scarborough. And again, it has been an issue in other communities at that municipal level. And we haven't put in place ordinances. I think only right now, I think Lewiston is one of the few places in the state that has put that local ordinance into law. But I think we're kind of a little bit at an impasse without a little bit more clarity. And I think that it's reasonable to provide that clarity for municipalities about what is meant by a non-discriminatory manner of instituting these policies. And so at the same time, I think it's important to consider cost. And so I want to make sure that as part of this amendment, I've included the right for municipalities to set fair and non-discriminatory fees that in relationship to these small wireless facilities, so that if a municipality would like to put into place such an ordinance, which they do not have to, that they are given the ability to determine fees that are appropriate for the processing of these perhaps permits, abutter notifications, these sorts of things, to be collected as part of that local revenue budget. So that's kind of where things stand. And I really appreciate your time and consideration. I think it originally began for me as a constituent-led bill by a constituent, Eliza Boxer, here in Scarborough, but there's just been so many parties and a lot of interest actually from local officials here in my area of Southern Maine, but also in the telecommunications industry. I think that there's so many points of interest and concern. And so at the very least, I wanted to come before you all today, give clarity about kind of where things stand in the discussion. I want to make sure that the discussion continues from that 2019 legislation. I think that this is an exciting technology. I think it's an important one, but I think there's also kind of questions that persist, and wanting to give that guidance and clarity and maintain that local control, I think is really, fundamental. It's a very unique part of Maine's character and style of government. And I really appreciate any public comment that anyone has, either for or against. I just hope that this continues the conversation on this very important new technology. So thank you very much for your time and consideration of my testimony and the sponsor amendment. And of course, would be happy to take any questions anyone has.
Representative Warren. Representative Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Warren, for presenting what was a complicated bill in 2019 and is no less complicated today. I guess my question is, you put this in as a concept draft last session and bring back an amendment earlier this month, be it yesterday or whenever that may be. Have you worked with some of the interested parties like the Chamber, like Maine Municipal, various groups to make sure that this is in a good place so that everybody is on the same page as much as possible? Could you talk about that process for a little bit?
Yes, thank you very much. So, yes, I think ultimately where I'm at with this and why I'm happy that I've gotten this far, but just feel like this public hearing is important and further public comment is important, because I don't think I've come to any clear resolution. I have met with a couple industry aligned groups like AT&T. I've talked with people at Maine Municipal Association. There's a lot of, and then of course, a variety of interested parties, mostly, at this more local level and from Saco Council. And I think that there's not really a clear solution that is agreed on by I don't think that everyone ultimately comes down on the same page. I think that even at the local level, there's kind of this sense of like, this is a local town official here in Scarborough described it, Jean Katerina described it as the wild, wild west, and just it's at her hand. She'll do what she has to do, but she's not going to be an advocate on this issue, and wants as little confusion or trouble as possible around it. And her one issue was around fees and putting a certain amount of fees and making sure that this is not coming out of revenue and how it could impact property taxes, for example. I think from an AT&T Verizon standpoint, what I'm hearing consistently is that they're happy the way things are now and happy to set standards and be a resource for local government. But just yesterday, that from the airline industry, this request that it causes this undue burden or interference with planes taking off or landing. And sort of my question being, well, okay, who is the authority to say what the capacity of these technologies are? And so I guess it kind of continues to be a really, I guess, a controversial topic with many different points of view. And I don't know that I've come to any resolution with some of these parties. I think I'm most closely aligned with the municipal association. So this being a state and local government issue, I think ultimately it comes down to, if there are so many questions, and if that's not my area of expertise, I guess I'm arguing through this amendment that we want to affirm local control while there are differences of perspective. And that's a place I think we all ought to agree, but I find even there people don't necessarily want that. Not everyone wants that in the same way. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah, it's a tough one, I know. There's also the ecological concerns, so I guess that's part of this as well. Yeah, I know it's been a big one, certainly for a first term legislator. It went from constituent led to many different interested parties. So yeah, again, I appreciate the question. I hope that provided some clarity.
Okay.
Oh, I think you did. I think, but the main reasoning for it is how we got from a concept draft last session to this here today. I guess I guess you explained that to some extent. I was just trying to follow the process there, because it seems like the solution could have been presented last session maybe, or this language could have been presented then. And I thought at the time the reason for carrying it over was some willingness to work with parties and see what could be achieved. So that's why I asked what I did. So.
Well,
No,
thank you,
thank you.
Representative Toole.
Oh, I appreciate that. Just, I guess, in clarity for follow-up, the way that the language ultimately came out was because I didn't come to any further resolution between interested parties. This was language that came from a Scarborough Town Councilor, Betsy Gleistein, after a public comment and basically a public hearing in Scarborough around this potential small wireless facility ordinance. And why I'm at this place I'm at now is there wasn't any ordinance ultimately adopted, because there wasn't clarity about whether they could adopt an ordinance based on these parameters. So I hope that makes sense. That's ultimately where it came down, just not even sure whether they could make an ordinance based on these different concerns from the Scarborough community.
Representative Warren. Representative Reisman? On mute.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony, Representative Warren. My question relates to something that Will also made reference to. This is an extremely complex kind of issue. And I'm just looking at the wording within the amendment. Can you tell me what the difference between a cable television company and a small wireless facility is?
Is this having to do with whether there is a certain amount of discrimination, or whether there ought to be? And if so, I can't tell you the difference between those two things, but I do think that we don't have the amount of research and years of experience with the 5G and small wireless facility technology as we do with any sort of more traditional telecommunication technology. Again, I think things like that open letter yesterday from many of the major players with the airline industry kind of communicate that. So I just think that this is it's a known unknown in a way. So I guess one of the biggest difference that's relevant to this bill is that we know a lot more. We know a lot more about the impacts of many telecommunication cables and elements in a way that we just actually don't necessarily know with small wireless facilities. That's my impression, at least.
Matlack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, Representative Warren. My question concerns the original intent of the bill that was passed and then signed into law by the governor, which is that it creating these systems between towns, among towns, should be seamless and should be easy. This looks like it is putting more stumbling blocks in the way of smaller concerns in favor of larger concerns. And I always worry that that's what's happening, is that now that we're opening up our state, that some of the smaller homegrown businesses will be sidelined, especially if there's a patchwork of different ordinances, if there's many different variables that smaller businesses need to deal with, as opposed to large concerns like AT&T. So is this, I want to ensure that whatever changes, if any changes that we make, don't affect the small concerns in favor of the large concerns. Have you, I know you've talked to AT&T, but have you talked to some other state or main state businesses that might be adversely affected by something like this?
Well, I appreciate the question. I think that's very much the concern from the telecommunication industry. I guess there's not anyone I think I would name, because I don't necessarily fall in line with that view ultimately, and I wouldn't want to. Basically, I didn't ask their permission to mention them, but that is the big concern. That basically that there's a concern that this would halt progress, that this would halt the streamlining of these sorts of rollouts. And I think at the end of the day, we have to, I guess, give local municipalities the power to make that choice themselves. I think because there's a certain amount of uncertainty, confusion or interest in doing things that are that protect each municipality's own, ecological concerns or historic preservation concerns. I actually kind of think that that's a more nuanced principle. And if a town wants to be a part of a larger rollout, and if what something like AT&T or Verizon is offering helps to provide that, and they can make that argument to a town, I think that, let's say in a town like Scarborough, I think that we ought to, as a town, have the right to say, is being part of this rollout, is that more important to us than protecting the scenic view of Higgins Beach or Prouts Neck or the Scarborough Marsh in this particular way or that one? I don't know that I think that we should make that decision for municipal governments, but I think that could be a more nuanced question, and I'm sure you'll get many different answers. I'm sure it is possible, yes, that it would halt the rollout in certain ways, but I think that there are other considerations, and if they have a powerful enough argument and enough evidence behind them, then I don't think that there's a problem with asking them to go and explain why in this town or that town it's more important to have 5G technology than protecting the view of some beautiful part of Maine. So I'm sure different communities will make a different choice, but I do think that local control is right here. I think that they can make that choice.
Hey, thank you. Representative Copeland, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Warren, for bringing this to our attention and for doing all the background work. I too believe strongly in local control, but I have real concerns about the actual amendment coming out within 24 hours of the public hearing. And I don't see much testimony on this, and it's a big issue, and it matters to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And so I would be inclined to make a motion to table this to allow others to weigh in.
Lynn, our analyst. Hello, Lynn.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chair. So what the committee would be doing would be requesting a second public hearing. And that would be at the discretion of the presiding officer. So I'm actually brainstorming as I talk. So one option would be you could continue this public hearing and let everyone testify who's here, and then request a second public hearing by the presiding officers. Again, that's at their discretion. An alternative would be to have when you have the work session, to have that as an informal opportunity for others who aren't here right now to provide additional information to the committee. I'm not sure that a motion to table is, and I'm not a parliamentarian, I'm not sure that's the tool you would want to use.
So how about a motion? How about, based on what you're telling us, so it sounds like we should have a motion to continue the public hearing with a request to the presiding officers for us to do that. Can that be a motion, or would you prefer something simpler?
I definitely think if you continue the public hearing, at the end, the committee could vote to make a request to the presiding officers. I don't think it needs to be a motion. I think it would just be, if the committee votes, I can file on the committee's behalf a request for a second public hearing.
That sounds good.
Did you want to withdraw your motion? Because there is a motion on the floor.
I withdraw my motion.
So Lynn, do we make that vote now? Or just, I mean, once the public hearing is done, we'll take that vote. Is that what you're saying?
I would suggest wait until the end of the public hearing. Before you close the public hearing officially, you can then have a discussion and a vote on whether you want to hold a second public hearing. Yes, that's how I would do it.
Okay, thank you, Representative Copeland, for getting us there, and Lynn as well. So who is our next speaker, Cheryl?
Yes, I'll let Neil Goldberg in, and he is for
Representative Matlack. I'm going to turn over the reins, and I'll hopefully be back within a half an hour, but I will join you then. Thank you, everyone.
Representative Matlack. There's only one other speaker in the waiting room who is against. Would you like me to let her in or wait?
My apologies, please let her in. Good morning, Mr. Goldberg. Welcome to the State and Local Government Committee. If you could please state your name and your connections and then give us your testimony, that'll be appreciated.
Happy to be here. Representative Matlack and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Neil Goldberg. I am here on behalf of Maine Municipal Association and am providing provisional testimony in support of LD 383. As this committee has just heard, the amendment came out so recently, we've been yet to fully engage our Legislative Policy Committee. Will do so tomorrow when we formally establish a position. If it is different from the comments and the position that I present today, I will offer amended testimony. I was secretly hoping that maybe this public hearing would have been paused for a second one, which would have allowed me to have done that. But I think it is worth expressing some of our first sentiments in reaction to this amendment. It did catch MMA by surprise. In the past, MMA has been working cooperatively with industry stakeholders to devise an agreed upon path forward, how it is we will define these wireless facilities, where and why we should permit them under certain circumstances, and who will hold the authority to make those decisions. These were all questions that were being discussed, as well as MMA had initiated a process to create a model ordinance for municipalities. This amendment seems to be going in a different direction from those conversations. it clearly has some municipally friendly language. And so for that, MMA is not going to stand in the way of it. However, we also don't want it to put an end to the conversations and the budding partnerships that are forming around this. The topic of small wireless facilities does deserve, a few things should be pointed out from the impacts that it has on municipalities. The first is that this isn't just one wireless small facility per municipality we're talking. It's probably going to be one per provider. And so to an earlier remark is that what are we doing to protect the small providers here in Maine, not just the AT&Ts, is that we will allow these small wireless facilities, numerous ones in our local communities. And that does create a problem when you have 4, 5, 6 of these refrigerator-sized utilities all looking to connect. And then on top of it, the denser the community, the more of these facilities in proximity you need to each other. So there does become this scale that creates an issue. It's never going to be one that communities are worried about. It's the 100th that is the tipping point. And then some consideration needs to be given that these are not the only utility structures that are looking to access the public right of way, that municipalities are trying to juggle numerous interests right now that are asking for essentially the same permissions. And so giving a carte blanche one to all of them is what we believe to be ill-advised. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that we are recommending a discriminatory approach. Parity should probably exist, but that we should be mindful that by saying yes to this, we have other interests to balance as well. And so we, again, with just 24 hours to look at it, look at this amendment and think that we would support this. It gives municipalities a lot of the flexibility and power that they really already have, but it codifies it. And that's an important thing for us. Now, as to the application fee at the end, we certainly did not request that and would understand if that gives pause to this committee. I'll leave it there, and my final remark being that we will submit amended written testimony after our LPC makes a formal position. I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Representative Reisman, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I asked this earlier, and I'm wondering if you can answer. What's the difference between a cable television company and a small wireless facility?
Well, I think that's a tough question to parse between, because theoretically a cable provider could install one of these facilities. I think what we're really talking about is a small wireless facility is defined by its size. And specifically, I think in statute, it's limited to a certain cubic volume. However, that definition is misleading because that's the cubic volume per facility. There's no mention of how many facilities will be co-located. So putting 6 refrigerators next to each other is something that will catch the eye.
Follow up, if I could just briefly, and that would be a small wireless facility is referencing cellular phone coverage and not cable? Question mark?
Yes, I know. I think you are correct there. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Do we have any further questions for Mr. Goldberg? There being none, we thank you for coming before the State and Local Government Committees today.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooley, welcome to State and Local Government. If you could state your name and your affiliation and give us our testimony, please.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Beth Cooley. I am the Assistant Vice President of State Legislative Affairs at CTIA. CTIA is the trade association for the wireless communications industry. I'm here today to respectfully testify in opposition to LD 383, as this is both unnecessary and potentially unlawful. I would also like to note that we will be following up with written comments as we're still continuing to analyze the amendment, given that we just received it about 24 hours ago. So I will keep my remarks brief and work with my members to provide more thorough written comments. To begin, it's important to note that connectivity is increasingly important for all of us. And Maine in particular has been very active in recent years in addressing connectivity issues through formation like groups like the Connect Maine Authority and the new Maine Connectivity Authority. Americans and Mainers' reliance on wireless service cannot be overstated. And the fact that we're having this hearing virtually still is a testament to that. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a powerful reminder of the importance of connectivity, as nearly overnight, we all had to figure out how to live, work, and educate our children online. It's been nearly 2 years since COVID was declared a national emergency, and America's wireless networks rose to the occasion. Wireless networks were able to handle a nearly unprecedented surge in mobile voice and data traffic overnight because of the amount of time and investment put into our networks. I have a lot of stats I can share with you, but I will put those in writing out of interest in your time, excuse me. But in Maine specifically, the wireless industry contributes over $1 billion annually to the state's GDP. Also, as you know, in 2019, in Maine, through the enactment of LD 1517, the state took a great first step in creating a framework for the deployment of small wireless facilities, also known as small cells. Since its 2019 passage, we can conservatively estimate that there has been an influx of at least $100 million annually into Maine since the passage of this framework. Additionally, we also know that this law is working because one wireless provider has indicated their small cell deployments have more than tripled since 2019, and another wireless provider reports their deployments have increased over 6 times. So the legislation before you, LD 383, is unnecessary and seeks to undo these 2019 reforms, putting future investments and their associated benefits in jeopardy. Specifically, LD 383 removes common sense language from that law requiring municipal ordinance regarding small cells be, quote, non-discriminatory, and that they relate to permitting. This would allow local ordinances to be discriminatory and would open up small cells to burdensome local processes that would likely block small cell deployment. Second, this legislation also allows municipalities to adopt small cell permitting ordinances that meet criteria as defined in the bill. Such provisions are unneeded because municipalities already have broad home rule authority, as this committee well knows. Other provisions of the bill calls for standards that may conflict with federal law. For example, spacing requirements for small cells can lead to an effective prohibition if they fail to recognize the unique characteristics of every deployment. A prohibition of deployment would result in a violation of the Communications Act, specifically Section 253A and Section 332. So therefore, spacing requirements may very well result in prohibiting personal wireless services altogether, which has been declared unlawful. So thank you very much for your time this morning. Again, we will, CTIA will submit more written comments as we analyze this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cooley. Representative Reisman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Cooley. I have 2 questions for you. One, as you mentioned earlier in your testimony about an LD number, and that was, I think you said 1517. Is that, did I hear you correct?
Yes, that was from 2019, the small cell framework sponsored by Representative Peirce.
Okay. The second question that I have has to do with, I greatly appreciate the investment of your industry in the GDP. But let me ask you if your industry or your organization has a goal to have coverage in some of the rural areas of the town. I'm talking more specifically about, you know, like 90% coverage. I'm in a district where there are plenty of dead zones and we need help. So what are the goals of your group to address that issue?
Thank you, Representative. That's a great question, and I appreciate that. I first have to say, as a trade association, due to antitrust laws, I am not privy to the future deployment plans of my members, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, US Cellular, etc. Having said that, I think this is a really exciting time for broadband deployment specifically. As you all know, the federal government has taken once in a generation steps to bring broadband funds to the states. And with ARPA funds recently passed, as well as the Jobs Act, the Investment Infrastructure and Jobs Act, we like the long names in Congress, there are hundreds of millions of dollars coming into the states, of which wireless can be included and should be included. Because as you mentioned, Representative Reisman, there are some very rural areas where fiber to the home just is not economical and perhaps not possible. Whereas wireless is a cost-efficient solution that can be deployed quicker and cover more residents. So while I can't specifically answer where my members are deploying, I would strongly urge you that as the state considers that incoming federal funds, ensure wireless is part of that solution, because we are an economical solution that can cover more residents quicker and more cost efficiently. Does that help answer your question?
Thank you for the answer. I don't think you really answered the question, but you made a good attempt at it. And I look forward to further testimony from you. And please keep in mind my concerns for my constituents who cannot get cell phone coverage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Copeland, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Cooley, for coming and speaking before us today. Your perspective is needed, as is everyone's. And we're hearing all this about the airplanes and so forth. So, we don't know all about 5G yet and what is coming. And there is concern about where they are, how close to residents, if those frequencies can stop airplanes, I'm just concerned what else, So I like that local control can control part of that, but I also know that we need this. We need this desperately, and having it streamlined for you to come in and implement is important. So what do you have to say on that?
Thank you, Representative. That's a very timely question. On the aviation piece, this is specifically talking about a licensed spectrum band, often referred to as C-band. What we're talking about with this legislation is generally millimeter wave. So these are two different licensed spectrum bands. But on the C-band piece, with respect to aviation, it's important to know that as we are working with all of the stakeholders, from the aviation community to the White House, that in our discussions, we are emphasizing that nearly 40 countries have already deployed 5G in the C-band with no impact on aviation. Europe is already operating with nearly 24 countries, and they've been doing this for the last 3 years. And Australia as well has thousands of 5G base stations in this band. So what's interesting is that the US government itself actually operates radar near the C-band power levels 10,000 times higher than what 5G will have. So, we're having, I think, collaborative discussions as we move forward in these discussions on aviation and C-band usage. Now, on the small cell millimeter wave side, which is generally what we're talking about with this legislation, we, the wireless carriers, absolutely want to work with your communities to ensure that we are honoring the aesthetic character of your communities, historic preservation laws, of course. We just need to ensure that any statutory requirements specific to setbacks or spacings aren't so onerous that they don't allow us to provide service at all. That's clearly what, again, given the pandemic, that's what people are asking for. So we are happy to work with municipalities and localities on this. Our argument is that that authority already exists today. This is a strong home rule state, as you all very well know. But happy to, bring my members in, have conversations with you, Representative Warren, as well, to figure out a solution here. But our argument is that, there isn't really a solution needed because the law, the framework as crafted is working, given the results over the last few years.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions for Ms. Cooley? Seeing none, thank you very much, ma'am, for coming by and visiting with us, and I look forward to your written testimony. This is a very interesting discussion, and this is a steep learning curve for a lot of us. So thank you very much for coming to visit with us today. Representative Copeland, first of all, Lynn, we talked about the potential for a second semi-public hearing or public hearing, or how should we do that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the two options are a formal public hearing, which would require a request to the presiding officers and their approval. So they could decide against allowing a second public hearing. So that's option A, a formal request to the presiding officers for a second public hearing. Option B is the less formal, which would be you schedule a work session and you get the word out and you allow. So it's a public hearing, but it's called a work session, so you don't need approval from the presiding officers. Those are, I think, the two options that I can think of at this time.
Go ahead.
One more thing. If you made the request to the presiding officers and they declined to allow it, and of course the request would explain why you're asking for a second public hearing. If the request is denied, that does not prevent the committee from asking interested parties to come and speak at a work session.
Thank you. Representative Toole.
I think Representative Copeland had her hand up first, so if you want to take her.
Oh, okay. Representative Copeland.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Toole. I'm in favor of the going before, the committee to get us another public hearing, because I think public hearings versus work sessions are advertised differently. And instead of inviting specific people, it's open to anyone. And I'm all for open. And like you say, and that's good to hear, that if they deny it, we can still do it in our own kind of way. But I think this is a very big discussion and it should be open to all.
Thank you. Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I first think we would have to go into work session to even have a discussion about whether we have a second public hearing. So I think that's the case. Maybe Lynn can correct me there, but I think that we would all have to agree to immediately go into work session for that purpose. And I mean, if that's the way people want to go, then I guess I'll add further comments when we get there.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Toole. I greatly appreciate having you on the committee because you know more in certain areas. I think Representative Toole is correct that the committee should close the public hearing, vote to go into a work session. Thank you.
All right. Did you want to save your comments for our work session then, Representative Toole?
Well, I have mixed feelings because I know we have a work session on the calendar, and technically when a public hearing is closed, folks can still send emails, can still do written commentary, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I have other comments that if we actually do vote to go into work session that I will make then. They're not appropriate at this time, but okay. Should we actually vote to go? That's personally my preference would be that we're scheduling there's a work session in 2 weeks and folks have adequate time to get their comments in, et cetera, that way. So yeah, I'm sorry for being all over the place. Was not expecting a work session on this today.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to go into a work session? To close this public hearing and to go into a work session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Representative Downs. There is a motion and a second on the table to close the public hearing and to move into a work session. Shall we raise hands? All those in favor of moving into closing the public session and we're moving into a work session?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All those opposed? Representative Bryant, how are you voting? Oh, you're on mute.
I would vote to go into work session. My apologies.
Thank you very much. So we have closed the public hearing on this bill and we are moving into a work session. Representative Reisman, do I have to make a motion to go into work session or else we're there? Representative Reisman?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, my internet is chopping up on me. So we had a motion on the floor to close the public hearing and go into work session, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and what was, so far everybody voted to go into work session?
So we are now in work session, yes.
Okay, so.
Well, your hand was raised up, so the assumption was made that you voted to go into work session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's okay, that's fine.
Did you have a comment for work session?
I do, but I'll let some other folks go first.
Okay.
Gathering my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Toole?
So I'm sorry. Yes. So now that we're in work session, I asked the question during public hearing, how we got from a concept draft that we carried over last session with the intention that things would all be worked out and or at least that there would be language prepared for the public hearing with adequate time that folks could kick around and look over. So with that, I mean, my frustration is that if we're going to proceed with having another public hearing, the sponsor was aware of the circumstances, and I don't mean that to be harsh. I don't mean that to sound uncaring, but this is some of the problems. Sometimes we get these concept drafts and language shows up at the last minute. It's not fair to anyone in the public, but at the same time, folks knew this was advertised 2 weeks ago or longer when we were going to have the public hearing. And at that point in time, language should have been ready for folks. So, I mean, honestly, I would much prefer to have a second work session as we had originally planned, have folks in. I honestly, my own opinion on the bill is it is so complicated and not ready for prime time that I don't see a way we could pass it anyway. If we're going to go there, but I do respect folks, and I do think that we should informally have folks come in a couple of weeks and give folks 2 weeks to the additional 2 weeks informally. But having another public hearing formally and then getting to the same place 2 weeks later down the road when things could have been done differently, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really there. I'm not wanting to fight. I'm sorry. It's just my opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Toole. Representative Reisman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I concur with Representative Toole, and I would like to see further discussion happen for the time that we originally scheduled the workshop for. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I also agree with Representative Toole, Representative Reisman, that rather than a formal additional public hearing, that we be more expansive in allowing people to testify at our work session. I believe that those people who have testified today, who have submitted written testimony, will hear about the work session and be able to come, and Lynn could also put it out to the interested parties. But holding a second specific public hearing when we have this one. Regrettably, the final language did not come in until yesterday afternoon, but I believe that's on the Representative Warren and not on us to get the work done. So I believe that I would like to just move forward with an expanded work session rather than request an additional public hearing from the presiding officers. Representative Reisman, is your hand up again? Or still? Up, still. Okay, thank you. Is there any further comment about this? Are there any motions to be made? Representative Warren?
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible to make a comment?
Yes. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. I just want to thank you all for your consideration. I agree that it's a very complex technical matter that is, at many points throughout the process felt very much over my head, and where I continued from last session to have many questions and many points of, I guess, difference of perspective with the variety of stakeholders. I want to say that I really agree and appreciate what Representative Copeland said about the importance of a public hearing with all relevant information ahead of time. And at the same time, I know that I've put you all in a difficult position because I just never got to that place of kind of cohesion and all these different interested parties kind of coming to some same agreement. So I appreciated this opportunity to present kind of how far we've gotten, myself and Elisa Boxer, and so I just appreciate, I think the discussion's got to continue. I hope that there's more public comment. I hope, at the work session there is as well. I think there continues to be a certain amount of confusion and interest and clarity, but I think there were a lot of great points, and I appreciate all of your consideration. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Warren. Cheryl, you had a comment to make? Eventually.
Yeah, eventually. I do, when I send out work session notices to the interested parties list, there is a section at the bottom of the notice, and I do include the Zoom link. And it says on every single work session that I send out, rather than send Zoom invites to a limited number of participants, the SLG chairs have decided to allow interested parties to attend work session Zoom meetings if they wish to do so. Just like for public hearings, SLG work sessions will be held on a Zoom webinar platform where attendees will be able to see and hear SLG members and those individuals recognized to speak, but will not be able to speak or be heard unless and until recognized by the chairs. Unlike a public hearing, there should be no expectation that work session attendees will be called upon to provide input or additional comments. And then I have more information after that, but is that kind of what you wanted?
Yes, I believe we're fairly liberal in allowing people to speak here in this committee. And so okay. That's not a political comment. But yes, I would hope that those, especially those people who have information such as Ms. Cooley would come back and share with us their concerns, and also let me see, Mr. I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name already, but the representative from MMA will come back and tell us what their group has to say. So unless there's some interest in doing anything other than moving to a work session in 2 weeks, I believe we could close this work session and go back into public hearing. Representative Reisman, were you up first?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm wondering for the work session, if my question somehow can be addressed, and it had to do with the plans for the cellular industry to get better coverage in some of the rural areas. And I don't know if our clerk can come up with anything around that.
Okay, we'll see whether that fits into our purview, but perhaps some of the people who will be coming before us may be able to answer that. Representative Toole. You're on mute, sir.
There we go. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I believe if there are no other questions, and I don't see any, I would like a motion to table with the understanding that I forgot what date we agreed to on chairs and leads for the work session date, but if somebody has that handy, and I would make a motion to table it until that day.
Okay, there's a motion to table on the floor. Lynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to share that the work session by the chairs and leads was scheduled for the 31st.
Okay.
So 2 weeks from today.
Okay, thank you.
Until
So we have a motion to table on the floor. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you very much. A vote. All those in favor of the tabling motion, please raise hands. I believe that's unanimous. Representative Pauls, are you here with us? Thank you. Okay. So we will bring this bill back for discussion in 2 weeks. And we will move along to open up a public hearing on our next bill. Thank you very much. Thank you, Representative Warren, for coming by and chatting with us this morning, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you. I believe Representative Lookner's bill, LD 1658, will be our next bill this morning. If we could invite Representative Lookner over, that would be great. There are still participant hands up. Representative Reisman, you want to lower your hand?
Representative Lookner, oh, there he is. Got him.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Senator Baldacci, you're back. Then I will turn it back over to you. We are just beginning to work on LD 1658 with Representative Lookner. He is here to provide testimony.
Thank you, Representative Matlack. Representative Lookner, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good, Mr. Chair. Ready to testify whenever you'll have me.
You have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay. Terrific. I'll try to avoid bringing this to, 2 public hearings and 2 work sessions and get right through it. So anyway, thanks for having me. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, honorable members of the Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Grayson Lookner and I represent part of Portland. I'm here today to testify in favor of LD 1658, an act to increase campaign finance transparency and accountability in municipal elections. If there's one thing that most Mainers feel strongly about, it's that there is too much money pouring in from wealthy out-of-state interests to influence our elections. Mainers want to feel as though our elections are about our voices and our votes, not about who has the deepest pockets for misleading advertising or for hiring the largest campaign staff. That's why we've implemented groundbreaking programs and have robust systems in place for tracking spending on the behalf of campaigns and political action committees at the state level. When it comes to our municipal elections, however, it is a much different story. In the state's largest cities, campaigns are becoming increasingly inundated with money coming from wealthy national interests to influence voters on elections for school boards, city councils, mayoral races, and municipal level referenda. Town clerks, who are the backbone of the democratic process and who go above and beyond to conduct elections in a fair and accessible way, are easily overwhelmed by this unprecedented spending when combined with all the other duties with which they're tasked. In 2019, in Portland alone, campaign spending on municipal races exceeded $500,000. In 2020, that spending exceeded 1.1 million, making these elections some of the most expensive in the state behind statewide races. City clerks simply do not have the requisite expertise and staff to stay on top of all the spending. LD 1658 would assist city clerks in Maine's largest municipalities by utilizing the experience and expertise of the Ethics Commission to assist in producing reports on spending and mandating compliance in a timely way. This would go a long way towards ensuring accountability in our local races. I've had good discussions with both the Ethics Commission and the city clerks of Portland, Lewiston, and Bangor. It is clear that this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and we are working on solutions that work for everyone. And I'll be interested to hear their testimony today. We cannot simply allow unmitigated spending to continue to inundate our local elections and overwhelm our city election officers. The state has a duty to act, and I'm confident that LD 1658 can be a solution. So thank you for hearing my testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Let me just be sure I'm reading the right document. So this governs only municipalities with more than 50,000?
So that's our current, the bill currently, and we're discussing amending it to make it 30,000. I think ethics has some concerns. There's a state law currently that mandates that any municipality with over 15,000 residents has some kind of campaign finance accountability mechanism. But the state doesn't directly, the Ethics Commission doesn't really have any purview. Their city clerks are currently may ask the Ethics Commission to step in. But as the bill is written, it's only municipalities over 50,000. Lewiston and Bangor are very interested in the help as well. So we could, change it to 30,000.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that there's only one city.
Yeah.
With more than 50,000.
As the bill is written, that is.
Okay.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So any other questions for Representative Lookner? Okay. Representative Lookner, you said, I do have one additional question. You said you had spoken to the clerks in Bangor, Lewiston, and Portland, and they're supportive of this bill?
They are. Yep. And so for that reason, we're kind of thinking about tinkering with a number of 30,000. I know ethics is concerned that, they don't have the capacity to bring in a whole lot more municipalities than that. But I think that 30,000 number we can make work.
Representative Reisman, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Lookner. Could you answer this question for me? And that would be, many elections, I know, especially in smaller towns, are nonpartisan in nature. How does this bill relate to the nonpartisan nature of many municipal elections?
Sure. So, elections in Portland are also nonpartisan municipally, and as well as our referenda. So there's really no partisan lean here. It's just a matter about, if we want to make sure that the money is getting spent on the behalf of PACs and candidates and so on and so forth, it is reported and accessible in a timely manner, and ensuring that the clerks have the resources they need to make that material available.
Representative Reisman, did you have any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other questions for Representative Lookner? Representative Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just quickly reading through the summary of the bill, and notice there's a posting requirement on smaller municipalities for. Do you feel that this would trigger a mandate preamble, or because I know many small municipalities don't even have websites.
Right.
How would you weigh in on that?
So my understanding and interpretation of the current law is that it only, cities and towns and municipalities with over 15,000 residents have campaign spending accountability requirements. So it wouldn't affect, the myriad smaller municipalities throughout the state in which, town clerks are operating out of their garages and so forth. This is, really just for the largest towns and cities that have, especially as the bill is written, it really wouldn't affect any of the smaller municipalities.
Questions?
I'm sorry, I had a follow-up.
Sure, okay, go ahead, Representative.
Sorry about that. I hit mute by
That's all right.
accident. But so with that though, reading through the summary of the bill, it stipulates for municipalities less than 50,000. Would it be your intention to have that whole thing taken out and just limit it to the larger municipalities, or did you have some intentions of having some requirements on smaller municipalities?
My understanding is that the smaller municipalities may ask the Ethics Commission for assistance in doing their reporting, but are not required to, not shall, they may.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Lookner. Representative Lookner, thank you. I believe, welcome to Patty Du Bois. Nice to see you. And I know you're in Waterville, is that right, Ms. Du Bois?
Yes, good morning. I'm in Waterville. Thank you, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the State and Local Government Committee. Again, my name is Patty Du Bois. I'm the City Clerk of the City of Waterville, but I'm speaking today on behalf of the Maine Towns and City Clerks Association in support of LD 1658. And thank you for the opportunity. Current law requires that campaign finance reporting must be done for municipal candidates and municipalities over 15,000 or more in population. Therefore, almost all of our members are not directly impacted by this bill. A survey of town and city clerks in municipalities over 15,000 in population revealed that all, not surprisingly, were in favor of this bill, and all suggested support for lowering the population threshold to 15,000. All agree that the intricacies of administering campaign finance law is best suited for the experts at the Ethics Commission. Of course, all understand the burden that this may place on the staff at the commission. Therefore, consideration of an amendment lowering the threshold to over 30,000 in population, which was mentioned by the sponsor, would encompass Maine's three largest cities of Portland, Lewiston, and Bangor. This would add approximately 50 plus or minus candidates that they would have to keep track of. Further lowering to 25,000 in population would add South Portland, or approximately a total of 60 additional candidates. Should this bill pass, along with possible amendments lowering the threshold further, this topic can be reconsidered in the future to consider further amending down to 20,000 in population to include Auburn, Biddeford, Sanford, and Brunswick. That would meet about 130 candidates additional for the commission. The final step would be to include the remaining 7 municipalities, which would bring it to around 200 candidates. The only concerns that were raised by our membership related to the requirement to post reports within 24 hours of the filing deadline, and what fines, if any, would be imposed for non-compliance. As you can imagine, the 11 days before an election are very busy, and we're concerned that we could miss that deadline. Currently, there's no requirement for this, nor there has been any request by the Ethics Commission to post reports for municipalities. So that's something new that would be required, although many towns do post them. Some clerks recall that online reporting was being developed by the commission and that eventually municipalities would be brought on board, but that doesn't seem to be happening. In conclusion, our members are in support of this bill as it stands and would also support an amendment to include more municipalities or to shift at least some of the responsibilities of the review of the reports to the commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dubois, thank you for your service. Any questions for Ms. Dubois? Patty, the next speaker, I think, will be Attorney Broadingham.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Chair Baldacci and Chair Matlack and members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is John Broadingham, and I live in Falmouth, and I'm here today on behalf of Maine Citizens for Clean Elections, testifying in support of this bill. By way of background, I've been a practicing attorney for 31 years. I've been working in the area of campaign finance in Maine for 25 of those years. I've been legal counsel for the League of Women Voters of Maine and for Maine Citizens for Clean Elections. I've run for office myself 3 times and have served in this building for 4 years. I've advised many candidate and ballot question campaigns and written several citizen-initiated bills myself. I've served as legal counsel in campaign finance cases in state and federal court and the Ethics Commission. I've also been proud to serve as Assistant Attorney General. So based on that experience, I agree with Representative Lookner that it is time to bring municipal campaign finance reporting up to the same standard that applies for state campaigns, at least for the largest municipalities. In our view, transparency is the backbone of everything that is done in the world of regulating campaign finance. There's overwhelming bipartisan support among the public for campaign transparency. Without transparency, voters lose critically important information relevant to all aspects of campaigning in our democracy at large. The new information system described in this bill will cost some money, but it is well worth the cost and is frankly overdue. Many municipal campaigns are now more expensive than state legislative campaigns. Local issues can be huge and the stakes are high in both candidate and issue campaigns. Yet the public struggles to find even the most basic information of what special interests might be paying and to influence exploding costs of these campaigns. This is not the fault of municipal officials. As you can tell from other testimony you've already heard, they do support putting resources into the solution, for which we are very grateful. And we do support the clerk's suggestion for lowering the threshold of the population. We hope that an improved system will also benefit candidates, making it easier for them to submit information and to comply with the applicable laws and standards. And we would urge that those involved would prioritize a software platform that does not straitjacket administrators into limited functionality, which results in kind of astronomical charges for future modifications or expansions if needed. We would think that should be part of any request for proposals should this bill be enacted. So thank you for listening. Thank you for considering this measure. It may be one of those rare bills in the political world to get unanimous bipartisan support, one small step perhaps towards strengthening our democracy at this important time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Broadingham. Any questions for Attorney Broadingham? Okay. We very much appreciate your input on this and on many other bills, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Cheryl, do we have any other speakers on this matter?
We do not.
Do you have anybody that is registered against it?
He said that he was not going to be able, oh, that was the last bill. No, I do not. Oh, wait, I do. Wait, I apologize. I'm just looking at my list now. Jonathan Wayne is neither for nor against.
Okay.
I apologize, Mr.
That's
Wayne.
all right. That's all right. So we will bring Jonathan into the hearing.
He's coming. There he is.
Morning, Mr. Wayne.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
You have the floor.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm Jonathan Wayne, and I see some familiar faces. It's nice to see you. I'm the executive director of the State Ethics Commission. We're the campaign finance agency for the state of Maine. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. I've been the executive director for 18 years. And so I've watched campaign finance issues in the state over that time period. And I'm here today on behalf of the staff of the commission, which has only 6 employees. And we're responding to the bill as written, which only applies to Portland, but we're also responding to the proposal that you've received from the Municipal Clerks Association that would expand the original proposal to starting with 2 or 3 other municipalities, but eventually the proposal from the Clerks Association is that candidates and PACs in our 15 largest cities and towns in Maine would all be filing campaign finance reports with us, registering with us. We would be reviewing those reports. We would be responsible for all the enforcement. We would be giving them the advice. If reports weren't in, we would be doing the enforcement. We would be reviewing them. And so altogether, that adds up to 160 candidates. And we have some very serious concerns about what the impact would be on our existing workload. Right now, our focus is on legislative candidates, gubernatorial candidates, county candidates, and candidates for governor, as well as PACs that are influencing the statewide ballot question. So my written testimony outlines our concerns, which really go to staffing and a financial cost, and what is the demonstrated problem here? And it doesn't really justify a major shift in the focus of our agency. So Representative Lookner is absolutely right. We've had a couple of constructive conversations. We have another one scheduled for tomorrow. But I'm sorry, I really do have to express a dissenting point of view on this bill, not because we don't want to be helpful, but because there are limits to what an agency with a small staff can accomplish. And any IT changes always cost money. And it's just a reality of government that has to be honestly taken into consideration. So if you'll just bear with me, I just want to describe to you what our existing challenge is. Right now, every election year, we have 2 employees with the job title of candidate registrar. And you've probably dealt with our 2 candidate registrars yourselves as candidates. They monitor, those 2 employees, 500 candidates for legislative and county office and gubernatorial. That's an awesome workload, and they do a very good job. They educate the candidates on the financing rules, they answer their questions, they review the rules for compliance, and they follow up with the late filers. We also administer the Maine Clean Election Act program, which every election year attracts about 200 participants. So our 2 candidate registrars look at $5 qualifying contributions through the whole year, through October, and issue public funds payments. So these 2 employees that are monitoring 500 candidates currently are very, very busy, particularly in the last couple of weeks before the election period, which all of our election officials are busy in that time period, of course. What we currently do with the municipal elections is, here's the division of labor between us and the towns and the cities. We prepare the forms and guidebooks, which we send out to these 15 largest cities and towns. We answer questions from the clerks and from the candidates and the PACs. When they refer enforcement matters to us, say somebody hasn't filed a report or somebody's reporting is seriously inadequate, we investigate those and we will enforce the laws, but that's dependent on a referral from them. From our point of view, this is a very logical division of labor between us and the clerks. When they require our expertise to answer questions, to do enforcement, we're more than happy to do that. But the clerks perform the day-to-day work of receiving registrations and campaign finance reports from the candidates who are running for municipal office in their municipalities. So they have to go out, if say in a town like Waterville or South Portland or Augusta, say there are 10 or 15 candidates for municipal office. It's the local clerk's responsibility to remind them of the deadlines, make sure the reports are filed on time, and get them out to their local communities if it's requested. The gist of what the clerks are proposing is that all of that work for all 160 of those candidates would be shifted to our office. We'd like to say yes. As an agency manager, I want to say yes. And we've said, I won't bore you, but we've had a history of saying yes and taking on large new areas of responsibilities, such as collecting these $5 qualifying contributions the whole year. And we don't usually bring up staffing or budget concerns. But this particular proposal does scare us in terms of maintaining our ability to perform our current duties with respect to the candidates. We think that this would, if we were to take on all these candidates, has been proposed, it would diminish our ability to provide timely Main Clean Election Act payments, answers to questions, review the reports, the things that we do now. And that's a concern for us. It would also require us to hire one additional staff person, because those two very dedicated employees that I just described to you can't take on 160 new candidates. I'm sorry, they can't do it. There are also IT costs. Our current e-filing system is designed for candidates and PACs to enter their financial transactions into the database, and then that database generates a report that is made available to the public. And you folks as candidates have used this electronic filing database. The database is not designed for municipal candidates. Unfortunately, what we've found is that the costs that are charged to us by our IT company when we want to reconfigure that system are always much more expensive than we would expect. So if the legislature were to see fit to have the municipal candidates file reports in the same way that you do as legislative candidates in this e-filing system, we would not be surprised if the cost exceeded $100,000. And I know that seems like a ton of money, but I honestly think it would cost at least that much. So it sounds attractive to have municipal candidates file the reports through our e-filing system, but there just inevitably is a cost associated with that, and it should be paid for by the general fund. It wouldn't be right to charge the Main Clean Election Fund or our other account for this purpose. So that's a problem with the proposal, is that it would require money. Finally, I'd like to suggest that you think about how much of a demonstrated problem is there. I understand that there is dissatisfaction, that there is more and more money in Portland, in the Portland elections. But I do have to wonder whether there's anything really urgent that, have we really seen an influx of national money in municipal elections in Augusta or Saco or Biddeford? I wasn't really aware of that. And I think you need to look at that skeptically. As far as I know, this is not a burden. The burden of receiving these campaign finance reports by the local clerks is not, it's another responsibility that they have that adds yet another challenge to them. And I'm really sympathetic, I am, but I don't know that it's more of a burden or more of a problem than it has been in the past. It's just an ongoing thing. We are very willing to work more with them. And we don't really have a regular channel of communication with them. And consideration of this bill suggests to me that we should be meeting with them on a more regular basis to give advice to them about how they should be reviewing these reports and what they need to look for. And also, we're happy to develop better channels of communication where if they feel like somebody is not doing the right thing, they can come to us and ask for an enforcement proceeding in a more of a low-key way. We'd be happy to do that because we know this is politically sensitive for them. But I don't think those problems, those awkwardnesses, those challenges that are faced by the local clerks really justifies a major shift in the focus of our office. So that gives us pause as well. So I'm sorry if I sound negative. I just have to speak to you from the heart about some of the challenges of having a large mandate and running an office with 6 people and really relying on 2 very special people to get it done, and worrying about the impact on their ability to do it if this new assignment were to come our way. So thank you for your patience. I didn't mean for the presentation to last as long as it did. Thanks very much.
Director, it was very helpful and informative. Representative Ann Matlack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Mr. Wayne. A quick clarification, please. You mentioned a figure of $100,000, but that's for the computers. Plus, you would also be adding another employee. So that is an additional $100,000 that would be the cost to implement this?
First of all, I have to be really direct and honest. The $100,000 cost that I mentioned, yes, that pertains just to our electronic filing system. And that is at this point just a guess based on other changes we've asked for. In order to have enough staff to take on these extra 160 candidates during an election year, we feel we definitely would need to hire a project position. That would be the most economical way to do it for the state, would be every other year, we would hire a 1-year person during the election year to help out generally with candidate responsibilities, particularly the municipal candidates, but that project position would probably do other things. Most of the cost of that, I don't know how much that position would cost. Maybe with salary and benefits, maybe it would be $75,000. I don't know, but that would be the way to do it from a staffing perspective to take on this. And I also have to qualify this and say, look, you know, Representative Lookner was just looking for Portland originally. The idea to expand it to 15 municipalities is something that has been added onto the bill or is proposed to be added onto the bill through an amendment. And he may be looking to keep this a smaller focus.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Copeland, you're next.
I believe Representative Tool was.
Was he? Okay. Representative Tool, you want to go forward?
Well, thank you, Representative Copeland. I will take your word for that. So I have several questions. We'll start with one. I've been reading the summary of this, and I see where there is a provision that municipalities of under 50,000 people have to report campaign finance reports on their municipal website. Now that brings up several questions, one of which being, would it be you folks' interpretation that you would have to enforce that, monitor that, define that, all of that? Would that be a valid interpretation, number one? And the last part of the bill requires municipalities to report suspected violations to the Ethics Commission. So if that were triggered, wouldn't you then have to have an attorney or some other folks hired as well to investigate that? And what would happen if there was no perceived violation? I know there's a bunch of questions there, but it seems like those facets of the bill are sitting there that we haven't really weighed in on yet. So if I could get your thoughts on that, that would be great.
Well, I don't want to speak for the sponsor on the intent behind the bill, but I think that with regard to the website, I'm not sure that he's looking to have the towns and cities that have a population of less than 15,000 have to post campaign finance reports. I see him shaking his head no. So that's not, I'm taking that to not be the intent of the bill. I think the idea that registrations and campaign finance reports would be posted on municipal websites or on our website would only be applying to in the towns and cities, these 15 largest towns and cities.
Because it's worded differently. So
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at, I hate to have you waste your time while I look at the language of the bill to try to interpret it, but I don't think that's the interpretation.
Okay.
We would like to do whatever we can to be helpful. I actually shared in my written testimony a recommendation that the town of Westbrook is currently doing a very nice job posting the registrations and the campaign finance reports on their website. And attached to my written testimony is the actual web page that Westbrook is doing. And there's a link to it in my written testimony as well. That is, from my point of view, a perfectly acceptable and would be a much better way than the status quo is for municipalities to get registrations and campaign finance reports out to the public, is to encourage the towns and the cities to post these registrations and reports as PDFs on their municipal websites. And I included the recommendation in my testimony, and I think I heard from a couple of the clerks I'm acquainted with today by email that I think that it was sort of an unfair suggestion from them. They hadn't heard me suggest that in the past, but I really think that from my point of view, I know everyone sees these from their own point of view, but I personally feel that that would be the right direction to move in, because I think towns and cities do have the capacity to post registrations and campaign finance reports in an effective way as PDFs on their website. And I've cited an example of Westbrook doing that well, and I think that's a good solution. With regard to the enforcement, I think that the way the status quo works now is that if there is a violation in these 15 larger towns and cities that a local clerk views as significant, they may refer that to us. And we don't get that many referrals. And I do have to stress that the local, these 15 clerks are not telling us about a lot of problems of people not filing reports or people not filing reports on time. We did have a significant enforcement matter relating to Portland, and I think we had one maybe in Waterville or Augusta too recently, but there are not that many of them. So right now it's discretionary with these larger towns and cities. And one thing the bill attempts to accomplish is to actually require them to refer them to us. Personally, I think it's more appropriate for it to be discretionary. I think local towns and clerks know what's serious and what's not serious and what is benefited from referring to us. And if things can be handled locally in a more informal way, I think they ought to have the discretion to do that. That's my point of view.
And if I might follow up, I would add that I would say with that, if something is required, do you think your tendency would then be to get more requests for clerks fear that they don't want to miss something. So, and they're required. So therefore they're sending it on whether it is or it isn't. Do you think that your case volume would increase?
It might increase, but I mean, we're prepared for that. I mean, we want to be responsive if there are problems, but
right.
Other than a few things that have been sent our way in terms of somebody not filing a report on time or a report not receiving the reports missing, reports not having the right details in them. We've had a few of those, but we haven't had a lot. So this again speaks to what is the problem, is there a demonstrated problem here other than people, there is more money in Portland. There are people who are dissatisfied with the way the city of Portland is displaying or not displaying reports in a convenient way. But I wonder if we really need to extrapolate those problems and attribute them to all of these larger 15 cities and towns. I'm not sure if that's really accurate.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else, Representative Toole?
No, I just said thanks. That's a big help from where you folks stand.
Representative Copeland, now it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here with us, Mr. Wayne. We certainly do appreciate the work that 6 people do. I've been working with them with my papers this week. Fabulous people and wonderful. So thank you for that and thank them on behalf of us. A couple things. One is the technology piece. I know this legislature has given funds and the go-ahead to the Secretary of State's office to modernize their computer works, and also the treasurer of the state. So I think not wanting to invest in technology is something that we should avoid. I think we should be looking for more streamlined and systems that could work more efficiently and take the burden off of people so they can make decisions rather than deal with data. So that's one thing. And you have an educated guess about 100,000. I would say that if this goes forward, that a fiscal note could be added and the decision could be made by the legislature, whether it's appropriate or not. And the other thing is, I think that it's more widespread than you do, but I don't have data to back that up. So that's my perspective. And so one of the things about having it go through the state rather than the municipalities is, I would imagine it to be more bipartisan or nonpartisan through the state. I think things happen on a local level. So I think for the advantage of both parties and all representatives, I think going through the state would be more efficient in that way. Those are my thoughts.
Very much, Representative.
Well, thanks. I mean, we will, you know, fundamentally, I mean, I'm here to sort of express to you our concerns about how this could impact our current ability to do our jobs. But we absolutely respect that, you know, we're a creature of state government. And if you want to assign us new responsibilities and you want to fund those, then that's your prerogative, and we'll respond and as the, you know, in a constructive way as we always have. On the issue of the money, I agree with you 100%. We wish we had more money to spend on technology. We would like to have the easiest to use system for everybody, including you, especially for the public. We have a teeny general fund budget. I don't want to go into all the details, but we just don't have any money to spend on upgrades to our technology. That's our problem. So it would play out exactly the way you described it. If you wanted to move forward with this, we would have to, or if not, I mean, we will tell the legislature what we expect this would cost. We'll do our best to twist our vendors' arms to get an accurate number of how much this would cost. And then it would be a decision for the legislature of whether you wanted to spend the additional $80,000 or $100,000 or whatever you would like, you know, whatever is necessary to make it happen so that we would receive these reports. That would be the legislative decision, and it really is your decision. And anyway, I agree with you 100%. We wish we had a lot of money to spend on technology, but we just don't. So we would be in the position to have to ask for money from you.
Okay. Representative Reisman. Representative Lookner, I'm going to recognize you. I just want to give the committee members a chance to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple quick questions for you, Commissioner. Thank you for your testimony. I'm wondering if you could clarify for me. I'm hearing two different apples and oranges here in terms of the size of towns that are being proposed. One says the 15 largest towns, and then there was another proposal that related to populations. Can you tell me, when you get down to the bottom of the 15, what the populations are like in those towns?
I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of you. I think the original bill pertained to towns and cities with a population of 50,000 or more. And there's only one of those. That's Portland. So that was the original proposal from Representative Lookner. And then there's a proposal from the Clerks Association to bring that population threshold down to, say, 30,000. And that would sweep in 2 or 3 more of our largest cities in Maine, like Lewiston and Bangor. And then there's a suggestion that if that worked out, then the population in the future threshold for this would go down even further, all the way down to 15,000. And that would sweep in all of the 15 largest cities and towns. So, you know, the smaller towns and cities in this range have 16 or 17 or 18,000 people in them.
Okay. One other follow-up question as to, I'll skip it for now. I could probably do that in the workshop. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Representative Lookner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I just wanted to answer Representative Tooley and Representative Reisman's question. If you're looking, so the existing statute that this would change applies to cities and municipalities in the city, or excuse me, in the state with more than 15,000. If you're just looking at the bill summary, it says, you know, any town less than 50,000 would also have to, you know, do something, but in the existing law, it's all, so that would be between 15, anything more than 15 and 15 and fewer than 50. So it's not saying any municipality in the state, of which there are hundreds, with fewer than 15,000 residents. So I hope that clarifies. It is in the summary. It doesn't say, you know, this only applies to municipalities more than 15,000. So I think that would If you look at the existing statute, it's over 15. I hope that clarifies. But tomorrow we're having, a meeting again with Director Wayne and some of the clerks. Any committee members who want to get on that call tomorrow, I'd be happy to have, so we can, hammer out something that works for everybody.
Okay, we look forward to seeing what happens with that discussion. Any other questions or matters from the committee? Okay, close the public hearing on this item. I would ask, is there information that legislators want staff to provide us in anticipation of a work session? Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if Lynn can provide it, but perhaps Representative Lookner and Mr. Wayne can provide a summary of their meeting tomorrow and see if they've come any closer. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Representative Reisman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if also we could find out if there are any significant reportings of irregularities on the municipal level about some of the elections. I think the commissioner indicated it might be 2, but is there a way we can find out if there's more than that?
Lynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I would be able to confirm from the elections executive director how many they have received. I think that would be he would be the source of information, and I'm happy to ask him maybe for a few years back with some numbers. Is that what you're looking for?
Just some indication. That'd be great. Thank you.
Matlack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure where we might get it, but is there any way to determine whether or not there's been an influx of money into local elections in the last few years? Anecdotally, I have heard that there was in Rockland, and I was wondering if there were other municipalities that had, whoops, my cat just knocked over the wall and he's in. So if we could find out whether there are other municipalities that are reporting an influx of funding for local elections, school board, city council, town select boards, et cetera. Thank you.
I will see what I can find on that also.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so any other questions or comments? That takes care of it. Thank you, Representative Lookner. And thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Others. Thank you. Okay, so I believe the next item is, Lynn, is the committee discussion regarding the James Weldon Johnson extension request.
Actually, Mr. Chair, we have LD 1187 for a public hearing, and the sponsor is here.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that had already happened or not, I guess.
Oh, yes, no,
So-
we went out of order, and so that one is still on the agenda.
So let's do LD 1187 and open the public hearing for that. Representative Martin?
Good morning, or actually pretty close, good afternoon, and members of the State Local Government Committee. I am John Martin, and I am sponsor.
Representative
of
Martin,
this
you're
bill.
on mute.
Am I unmuted?
I can hear you now. You were muted.
Oh,
for a
okay, sorry
second.
about that. I am the sponsor of LD 1187. It was a resolution. Basically, For people who remember the old governor's executive council, it was a desire to try to create a structure in the Constitution, much the way that pardons were handled. And I thought that we would put it in. And as it turns out, I was not successful in convincing the governor that she wanted to move forward with that. And I don't see the sense of wasting time. So I'm going to ask the committee to, since I can't withdraw because you've already called the public hearing, I would ask you to kill it.
I guess I first want to thank you, Representative Martin. I understand your reluctance to want to go forward. Representative Matlack?
I would move that we, do we need to go in work session, or could I just move ought not to pass right now? Actually,
Thank you.
Representative.
I was, Madam Chair, I was going to try and answer the question and rely on Representative Toole to correct me. I believe you need to close the public hearing, make a motion to go to work session, and then deal with it there.
That's correct.
Okay. So Representative Toole or Representative Reisner, did you want to speak before I close the public hearing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just gonna repeat what Lynn had said, that indeed that is the case. I don't know if there's any other folks for the public hearing, but if they're all good with us going right directly there, then I would be up for that.
There's one more, Representative Reisman, you have a question?
Thank you. I concur with Representative Toole. I'd like to make sure that anybody that wanted to give testimony has given it.
Right.
We do have one gentleman.
We still have one gentleman that we should let in.
Yeah, he's against.
Representative Martin, did you want to say anything for the bill?
No, I was here with the executive council, and that was the structure I was attempting to set up. But it's not worth trying to get a constitutional amendment through this process at this time.
Thank you. Mr.
Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, I am Michael Capetta, Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Maine, and I will refrain from delivering my testimony and save the committee the time and trouble of hearing me, because the outcome that the bill sponsor has asked for is the one we wanted. So thank you for letting me say that, and I will mute myself now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we can close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Are there any motions to entertain? Representative Matlack?
Thank you. I move that we enter into work session on this bill.
A second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any, everybody raise their hand? Wants to do that? Okay, we're in work session on this bill. Is there a motion? Was that Matlack?
I believe the motion is ought not to pass.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a second of that?
Second that.
Okay. Cheryl, can you call the roll?
Did Senator Rosen second that?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, this is LD 1187, ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
Yes.
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood. Representative Randall Greenwood, absent. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head. Yes. Representative Francis Head, yes. Representative Donna Dorr. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland.
Yes.
Representative Lynn Copeland, yes. 10 yes, 3 absent.
Representative Martin, I was looking forward to a discussion about this bill. I thought it was be a good idea to overhaul the pardon and some other stuff, but I guess we'll have to do that another day.
I think
So,
that's exactly the position after listening to the governor for some time.
Thank you for your service as well, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Are there just regarding this item that we need to discuss, or can we move on to the James Weldon Johnson extension requests? We can? Okay. Cheryl, do we have we have a speaker regarding that request?
I'm not sure, Lynn, do we?
Oh, the speaker is me, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
The chairs and the committee received a request from Representative Talbot Ross. You'll recall that in the first special, you voted out a bill that became law to create the observance of the James Weldon Johnson Annual Observation Day. And the bill also asked the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Tribal Populations to report back on January 15th of this year on the activities that they had planned with respect to the observation of James Weldon Johnson. So that was due on the 15th. A letter was sent, and I cannot remember if I've sent it to you already or not. I've sent a bunch of stuff out to you this morning. I see someone nodding. So there is a request that's been submitted to extend the report. This is an interim report, the report deadline until June 24th. So I'm briefing you on this, and at some point you will need to decide whether you want to allow for this extension. I'll just briefly summarize the reasoning in the letter. The main reason was that the funding for the work of the Permanent Commission on the James Weldon Johnson Day was not allocated until, or was not available until mid-October. And so there was a 3-month delay in that. And then there had to be appointments made. And those appointments were made, and the first meeting of the group charged with the James Weldon Johnson Day met on January 10th. They have activities planned for June 17th. However, they would like to be able to submit their interim report to this committee at a later date. They requested June 24th. The committee will not be, well, hopefully you will not be in session on June 24th. If the report is extended till that date, I will, of course, make sure that you all get copies of it. So that's just an update on that request from Representative Talbot Ross.
Questions or comments by members of the committee? Representative Matlack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that we grant the commission an extension.
Do we need to put a date specific on it, Lynn, or should we?
I generally suggest that you do have a date specific. You don't have to use the date requested, which was June 24th.
I would say June 24th then, if that's when they feel they can be successfully established.
So the motion is to extend it. Is there any discussion? Yes, is there a second for the motion? Anybody going to second the motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I would ask Cheryl to call the roll. A yes vote is in favor of the extension request. A no is against.
LD 1441, extend the report. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
Yes.
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood. Absent. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
Yes.
Representative Francis Head, yes. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 9 yes, 4 absent.
Hey, matter has passage. And the next item is language review. Is that correct, Lynn?
I believe Representative Toole has his hand up.
Representative Toole?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a quick housekeeping on that. That doesn't require, we don't need to do another bill for that. That just needs to go to the presiding officers, correct? For that action, because I'm just not sure. Plus, we also had another issue that we had talked about that we had also planned on talking about doing a report out based on one of the reports we received last week, having a discussion about that. I don't know where that falls on the schedule, but perhaps Lynn could enlighten us.
Thank you, Representative Toole. I do not believe that let me rephrase that. I'm not aware of a committee having to introduce a bill to extend a deadline. I'm sure that's an option, but I think that it's fairly common for deadlines in statute to not be met. So I think you could do this informally. With respect to your second point, which is yes, I did have on the agenda a discussion about reporting out a bill in response to the state librarian, state archivists report that you heard. So I can do that one now and do the language review second, or whatever order the committee prefers or the chair prefers.
Well, I think we should let's do the language review. Get that done. You've circulated this to everybody on the committee, correct?
I have circulated it and I am able to screen share if you would like, but this is the bill regarding, this is LD 1768, and this is an act to allow the private sale of certain state surplus property to state employees. What you all wanted, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just because, well, I think I am, just so I can walk you through this. Let's see, I don't want to share that. Are you seeing? Sorry. Are you seeing? Are you seeing this bill that says committee language review?
Okay.
Now we are.
Okay, thank you. So there had been a discussion about adding in that the sale price had to be for the private sale was at the same price as for the public sale. And I should pause and let you know that I did share this draft with the Department of Administrative and Financial Services, and they are okay with the way this is drafted. There was a request by the committee voted to add in this language that says that employees accept the property without warranties or guarantees, either express or implied. So that's you're buying this as is. The department did say that they don't think that's necessary, but that is how the committee wanted, and that phrase is in other statutes. The last portion was the discussion about what office equipment means. And so it means equipment and furniture used for business or professional purposes. And then I added including but not limited to. And there was discussion about also excluding specifically cars and fixtures. The department was preferred that it say the department may further define office equipment in rulemaking. They were fairly confident that fixtures and or cars or automobiles would not be considered office equipment. So they asked that that not be included in the language of the statute. So if you are all in favor of this, I just need you to nod your heads. If it's not okay, then we would vote to reconsider.
Okay, so are there questions or comments by members of the committee? Okay, I see none. Everybody with a show of hands, if we are okay with this draft. Okay, looks like the ayes have it.
Okay.
What's the next item, Lynn?
The next item is a discussion on whether the committee wants to report out a committee bill. So you'll recall that you heard from the state archivist and the state librarian on reducing costs from printing bills, printing reports, agency reports. They asked that some statutory changes be made to make it clear how many copies agencies needed to provide to them, if it's a print report, if it's an electronic report, or if it's a report submitted through the online digital library. And so I have drafted what would be a committee bill, and I will show it to you in a minute. What you're considering today is whether you want to report out a committee bill. That would mean, if all goes well, it would be considered by the legislature on Wednesday when they meet. If they vote to refer it back, it would come back to you for a public hearing and a work session. So what I have drafted is, and the reason I share that is because what I have drafted is going to go through a further review process with the public hearing and the work session. What I have drafted also is based on the language given to me by the state archivist and the librarian. It changes, for example, no longer do agencies need to provide 55 copies, they only need to provide 4. Again, goes down from 18 copies to 4. In this section 5, it clarifies that if an agency submits their report through this online digital, it's called the online repository, then they do not have to provide a paper copy. So the question before you
It's pretty
is-
much to bring it into the 21st century.
That's correct. And that reminds me, the biggest question to me is, what do you want to title this bill? I know I'm smiling about that, but I did struggle with a title I came up with, and titles are important. An act to promote electronic filing of state agency publications. Once that is not something you can change, well, you can change it in committee, but I do want to point that out, that that's how it's being labeled.
Representative Toole?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like that title. I do think that we should refer it to the legislature and then have them have us do a public hearing later. I mean, I just think we should have a public hearing and work session. It looks pretty straightforward, but I do think the public should be aware of what we're doing, but I would make the motion to start the process so that we can get it on the calendar for next week, so that we're not bogged down for a long period of time.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any other discussions? have a formal vote on that, Lynn, or can we just do a show of hands?
I would suggest a formal vote.
Carol?
Yeah, so this doesn't have an LD number yet, correct? Okay,
It does not.
all right. So the motion is to accept the resolve? Is that,
The motion is to report out a committee bill in response to LD 564. I believe that is the motion that Representative Tool made.
That is correct.
I just want to get this right.
And I-
564.
And not, I don't know if report out is the perfect language, but as long as it's coming back here, then I'm fine with it.
Right? So a yes vote would be to report it out. Correct? Okay. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Tool.
Yes.
Representative William Tool, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood, absent. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
Yes.
Representative Francis Head, yes. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 9 yes, 4 absent.
Okay. As passage, Lynn, is that, have we covered all the materials that we need to do for today's work?
Yes, you have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and then we're meeting again Monday?
That's correct. I will be
Okay.
sending the calendar out in a little while today.
Okay. Are there any motions to adjourn?
Cheryl had something to talk with us about?
Yeah, I didn't know if that was the resolve that you were talking about, Lynn, or is that something else on the schedule?
The resolve. I'm sorry, are you talking about today or next week?
Today. It said 11 o'clock.
Oh, yes,
resolve.
yes, yes. That was the resolve, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Hey, anything, is there a motion to adjourn? Representative Bryant makes a motion to adjourn, or you have a question?
One moment, just.
You muted yourself again.
Still muted, Representative Bryant.
Working on here. There we go. My apologies. I just wanted to say that the Wyndham's Private Roads report that's coming due February 1st, they're going to send it out hopefully by noon on Friday, so you have a chance to take a look at it over the weekend, should that come up next week with the reports.
Okay.
Just so that be aware of that. And know that you get a chance to review it over the weekend or Friday afternoon for, if we possibly have it on Tuesday with the reports coming in.
Comments by anybody on the committee? Any questions or concerns? So the next thing I have on our agenda is the 24th. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's a public hearing on LD 1832, which is on the Saginaw term limits. The discontinued roads subcommittee is going to report back, and you're going to have your follow-up discussions, the GEA discussions on the State Claims Commission and the Civil Service Appeals Board. A discussion about Wyndham. That report is on the agenda for the 2nd, but can be moved at your discretion.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Or do we
Right.
want to do, oh, Representative Bryan, did you want to do the?
No,
report
no, my
on Monday?
apologies. My apologies. What I was really trying to say is they'll have the report the Friday before, which is, must be like the 30th, Friday before.
Okay.
At by noon time, and then if the following week it comes up with the regular reports, you're ready. But so it's a couple weeks away, but I want to throw it out there so that you know that the town of Wyndham is concerned about it, wants to make sure you have it in timely fashion so you can actually look at it before the public presentation is done.
Okay, great. Is there any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second? Yeah, okay, we are adjourned.
Many
Have a nice
seconds.
day, everyone. Thank you.
Right, bye.
Bye.